The bold and the beautiful. Tragedy in the skies. Taylor's death sends shockwaves through the Forresters. Los Angeles has always been a city of glitz, glamour, and scandal. But nothing could have prepared the Forrester family for the news that shattered their world. Thomas Forrester was mid-design at Forrester Creations when his phone rang. The world around him faded as the voice on the other end delivered the unthinkable. Taylor Hayes had been in a plane crash. The plane, en route to Europe, had gone down amid violent weather conditions. A sudden storm front turned what should have been a peaceful flight into chaos. The aircraft lost contact shortly before a large explosion was reported near the mountains of southern France. Early reports were grim. There were survivors but very few. The death toll was climbing, and Taylor was among the confirmed fatalities. The phone slipped from Thomas's hand. His body froze. His eyes locked in disbelief. The room around him spun. Muffled voices floated in the air, but nothing mattered. His mother was gone. The same woman who had loved him fiercely, who had sacrificed everything for her children, who had just had her heart broken by Ridge once again, was now just a name on a growing list of the dead. Within hours, the family was reeling. Steffi's scream echoed through the Cliff house. Finn stood stunned as she collapsed into his arms. It wasn't just grief. It was rage. Pure, hot, consuming rage. And it had a target. She was only on that plane because of you two. Steffi spat through tears at Ridge and Brooke. If you had just followed through with your damn wedding, if you had just chosen her, she would have stayed. She wouldn't have gotten on that flight. Ridge stood motionless, guilt etched into every line of his face. He couldn't speak. There were no words. Just days before, Taylor had looked at him, hopeful, vulnerable, expecting the ceremony that would finally seal their years of history and heartbreak into something real. And he couldn't do it. He had walked away again. Chosen Brooke again. Taylor hadn't begged. She hadn't cried. She had only smiled through the pain and told him she understood. Then, quietly, she had packed her bags and left Los Angeles. Brooke tried to comfort Ridge, but his mind was elsewhere. He had seen her at the airport. She had hugged him goodbye. Said she was going to Europe for a change of pace, maybe visit some friends, maybe spend time by the sea. She had been putting on a brave face, but now he knew the truth. She had been broken. And now she was gone. Thomas booked the first flight to France. Alone. Determined. Numb. He couldn't allow anyone else to claim this task. Not the airline. Not the authorities. Not strangers. He would bring his mother home himself. Every minute in the air was a torture. Every passing cloud a haunting reminder of how quickly the skies had taken her from them. He played back every memory, every childhood moment, every hug, every time she fought for him, every time he disappointed her. And now there would be no more second chances. Back in Los Angeles, Steffi couldn't let it go. Her grief morphed into obsession. She blamed Ridge for waffling between two women. She blamed Brooke for always being there at the worst times. She blamed the entire toxic cycle that had defined their family for decades. In her eyes, this was the final price. The love triangle had finally claimed a life. Meanwhile, Ridge sat alone, staring at a photo of Taylor in his office. He hadn't cried. Not yet. He couldn't. The guilt was too thick. He remembered their youth, their laughter, her smile when they first held Steffi and Thomas. He remembered every time he left her, every time he chose Brooke instead. And he remembered her eyes at the altar, the last time full of hope and pain. Hope he crushed. Brooke tried to hold the family together, but her presence was now like salt in a wound. Steffi refused to speak to her. Thomas sent a cold, short message, "Do not contact me." Even Hope, who tried to bridge the emotional gap, couldn't reach them. In Europe, Thomas stood at the temporary morgue, waiting. When he finally saw her body, there was no denying it. It was her. His mother. Cold. Still. Silent. He fell to his knees, shaking. The woman who had once given him life was now reduced to an evidence tag and a black bag. He kissed her forehead and promised her justice, not from the airline, not from the storm, but from those who pushed her away when she needed love the most. He returned home with Taylor's ashes in a small, polished urn. The memorial was private, closed to the public, only family. And even then, there was tension. Steffy refused to let Brooke attend. Rich didn't argue. He stood next to his daughter and son, but a gulf had formed between them. He was no longer just the father who made a mistake, he was now the man they held responsible for their mother's death. As the sun set on the beach where Taylor once walked barefoot with her children, the family said their goodbyes. Steffy read a letter she had written to her mother, full of gratitude and fury. Thomas barely spoke. Rich tried once to say something, but the words died in his throat. Back at the Forrester estate, the silence was deafening. Everyone was processing it in their own way. Steffy began questioning her place in Los Angeles. The city now held too many ghosts. She told Finn she wanted to leave, maybe go back to Paris. Maybe take the kids and try to find peace somewhere far away from the shadow of Rich and Brooke's chaos. Thomas, on the other hand, wanted revenge. Not in the dramatic sense, but he wanted accountability. He started pulling away from Forrester Creations, refused meetings, ignored designs. He even suggested selling his shares, a move that sent shockwaves through the company. He no longer believed in the brand built on illusions. Fashion, love, family, it all felt fake now. And Ridge. He stayed silent. He didn't defend himself. He didn't fight back. But in the quiet moments, he broke. The man who had always been a king in his world was now a ghost. He walked the hallways like a shadow, haunted by a love he had never fully cherished until it was gone. He had lost Taylor. Forever. Brooke tried to be there for him, but the cracks were widening. Their relationship now felt tainted. Even she wondered, had her love come at too high a cost? As weeks passed, whispers spread. Reporters caught wind of the crash, the family drama, the accusations. Questions rose. Was Taylor emotionally unstable? Was she pressured? Was Rich responsible for pushing her to make that trip? The media frenzy grew. Eric Forrester tried to keep the family united, but even he knew the damage was deep. He pulled Rich aside one evening and asked him the one question no one else had dared to say aloud. Do you regret it, Rich? Choosing Brooke over Taylor. Was it worth it? Rich didn't answer. Because some truths don't need words. The tragedy of Taylor Hayes became more than a headline. It was a fault line that split the Forrester family in two. A woman who had given everything, her heart, her career, her loyalty was gone. And in her absence, the lies, betrayals, and regrets came pouring out. In the end, it wasn't the storm that killed Taylor. It was the storm of decades, the toxic triangle, the indecision, the emotional tug-of-war that had stolen her peace and left her flying away in search of healing. Instead, she found oblivion. And now, those left behind must live with the silence she left behind, a silence louder than any scream. Will Rich find the strength to face what he's done? Will Steffy and Thomas ever forgive? Or is the Forrester legacy now built on a foundation of grief that no one can wash away? Only time and the next wave of betrayal will tell. The waves of grief hadn't even begun to settle before a new storm erupted, one far more personal, far more explosive. Steffy Forrester was no longer content to mourn in silence. Taylor's death had ignited something in her, a fire, a fury, and a determination to hold someone responsible. And in her mind, there were two clear culprits, Rich Forrester and Brooke Logan. Days after Taylor's private memorial, Steffy made her move. She stood before the press outside Forrester Creations, reporters already hounding the family over the tragedy, and delivered a statement that stopped the fashion world cold. My mother, Dr. Taylor Hayes, did not just die in a plane crash. She died because she was pushed to the edge by the emotional manipulation and betrayal of Rich Forrester and Brooke Logan. She was discarded like she didn't matter. And I won't be silent anymore. The statement went viral in hours. Headlines screamed, Steffy Forrester blames Rich and Brooke for Taylor's death. Forrester family implodes amidst grief and scandal. Was the crash the result of a love triangle gone too far? Inside the Forrester mansion, tension was volcanic. Ridge was livid but torn. Brooke was mortified but defensive. And Steffy, she was just getting started. She confronted Ridge first, demanding he take responsibility, not just as a father, but as a man who had manipulated both her mother and Brooke for years. You strung her along, Dad. You gave her hope. You let her walk down that aisle knowing you couldn't go through with it. You destroyed her. I never meant. Ridge began. Intent doesn't undo consequences, Steffy screamed, eyes red with rage. But the real showdown was yet to come. The confrontation, Brooke versus Steffy. The confrontation happened at Forrester Creations, and planned but inevitable. Brooke stepped into the CEO office, trying to reason with Steffy. I'm sorry for what happened to your mother, Brooke said softly. But you can't blame me for the weather. You can't blame me for a plane crash. No, Steffy snapped, standing toe-to-toe with her. I blame you for everything that led up to it. For the years of torment. For the heartbreak. For being there every time my father tried to move on. Brooke tried to stay calm, but her voice trembled. Your mother made her own decisions, Steffy. She got on that plane because she had nothing left. Steffy's voice cracked. Because after everything she gave, he still picked you. You're poison. And now she's dead. That was it. The air snapped. Brooke reached out, whether to touch or calm no one knew, but Steffy reacted with white-hot fury. Her hand shot out and slapped Brooke across the face, loud and hard. The room froze. Rich stormed in at that exact moment and saw it all. Instinctively, he rushed forward, grabbing Steffy's arm to pull her away, but his grip was too forceful, too fast. The movement jerked her backward and she lost her footing, crashing onto the hard marble floor. A sickening silence followed. Brooke gasped. Rich stood frozen, horrified. And Steffy winced, clutching her shoulder and elbow. She didn't scream, but her face was pale with pain. Security and staff rushed in. Finn was called. Steffy was taken to the hospital. X-rays showed no fractures, but there was a minor dislocation and a nasty bruise on her ribs. But for Steffy, this wasn't just an injury. It was evidence. Steffy's declaration, I'm pressing charges. Within 24 hours, the media had the story. Domestic incident at Forrester Creations. Steffy Forrester hospitalized after altercation with Ridge Forrester. Though Ridge swore it was an accident, Steffy wasn't backing down. He hurt me. He grabbed me. My own father. And Brooke stood there and watched. She went public again, this time not just with grief, but with intent. My mother's death will not be swept under the rug. This family has protected Ridge Forrester for too long. I'm filing a formal complaint. Let the world see the truth. The announcement shattered the Forrester dynasty. Shareholders panicked. Eric was livid, heartbroken, trying desperately to hold what little was left of the family together. Hope and Liam tried to speak to Steffy, to reason with her, but she refused. You don't get it, she told them. This isn't just about Taylor. This is about years of lies. Abuse dressed up as love. Power masked as passion. I'm done letting it go. Ridge, for the first time in his life, looked broken. Not the heartbreak he wore like cologne after every failed romance, real devastation. His daughter had turned on him. The woman he loved was now at the center of a scandal, and the woman he rejected was gone forever. Meanwhile, Brooke tried to salvage what little she could. She arranged a press statement trying to explain. There was an emotional misunderstanding. No one meant for Steffy to be hurt. We're all grieving. We need healing, not blame, but the damage was done. Protesters stood outside Forrester Creations with signs, Justice for Taylor and the Forrester Love Games hold Ridge accountable. Internally, the company was fracturing. Sales were plummeting. Ridge was asked to take a leave of absence. Brooke stepped away voluntarily. Thomas distanced himself completely, spending more time in Europe, disconnected, unreachable. And Steffy. She stood alone at the head of Forrester International, now preparing to relaunch in Paris. Not as a daughter, not as a victim, but as a woman with power and purpose. The world had watched her lose her mother. Now they would watch her fight back. But beneath the surface, questions lingered. Was Steffy seeking justice or revenge? Was Rich truly guilty of anything more than emotional cowardice? And could the Forresters ever recover from a wound this deep? As the days passed, one thing became clear. This was no longer just about love. This was war. And in war, no one gets out clean.
Oh.